Good morning, friends. Okay, so today we'll be starting with settlement geography. Both of paper 1 and paper 2. And I will be discussing the syllabus of this topic with when I'll start in the next class, urbanization. At this point, you can understand, if you look into the syllabus, it becomes very clear that out of this total topic of settlement, around 90% of the syllabus is about urbanization and only 10% of the syllabus is about rural geography. रूरल ज्योग्राफी क्या रीजन हो सकता है? ऐसा कहाँ होता है यार? और कोई है? Okay. Can I say, because the geography which we study, it is Eurocentric. In Europe, North America, we find that urbanization levels range between 75 to 80%. That means majority of the settlements which are there, they are essentially what? They are urban settlements. So हमने ये geography को basically क्या किया? Import किया है. We have already seen. And that is the primary reason you will be finding our syllabus also similarly mostly focuses upon the urbanization rather than rural geography. It should have been reverse. India mein we find that still around 68% of the people live where? They are living still in the rural areas according to 2011 census. So India में उल्टा होना चाहिए था, but because हमने कुछ develop नहीं किया, we are just importing this geography. That is primary reason that you will be finding that majority of it is about urban geography. But still we have to study rural geography. There is no doubt that ultimately the majority of the rural settlements would get converted to urban settlements. And this is transformation which we also desire. But definitely there are so many people living in rural areas, we have to understand the various aspects related with the rural settlements. Now if you look into the syllabus, you will be finding that in the syllabus mentions about rural geography, number of topics, and one topic which is mentioned in the syllabus is the types and patterns of rural settlements. Then second part of the topic mentions environmental issues. In rural settlements. This is syllabus of paper 1. Syllabus of paper 2 simply says only one topic is mentioned there: types, patterns and morphology of rural settlements in India. So this is essentially three topics which are mentioned. Thus, first we are going to start with what the terms essentially mean. Here we are talking about number of things. We are talking about types, we are talking about pattern, and we are talking about morphology. Types, pattern, and morphology. Now, if we look into these type, patterns, and morphology, first of all, what do you understand by settlements? Settlements क्या होते हैं? It simply refers to the occupant units where people are living or residing. So that is what we simply call it as the settlement. Like village is essentially what? Village is a settlement. City is essentially what? It is a settlement. So characteristic grouping units which are clustered together where people reside. That is what we simply mean by the term settlement. Now when we are talking about types, patterns and morphology, you have to understand that these are the two terms which I start rural geography with. Even in 500 plus, for example, I started with this, and I specifically told students that you have to understand the question properly, whether the question is saying type or pattern, because both the terms are different. So you have to answer the question accordingly. And what I did, अभी टेस्ट में मैंने एक क्वेश्चन पूछा, examine the role of physiography in determining the types of settlements. समझ सकते हो लोगों ने क्या किया होगा? Almost 40% of students have done what? They have cited examples of pattern. Type and pattern को mix करके cite किया examples. ठीक है ना? So there is difference between what is type and what is pattern. अभी देखते हैं. This is so common mistake that even after I reminding them that this is a mistake you'll do, they again did that mistake. So type refers to what? Type refers to essentially degree of agglomeration. Of the occupants units, that means houses. Degree of agglomeration. While pattern refers to the map view or the geometrical shapes that these occupants unit make together. These occupants units make together. So that geometrical shape is what we basically try to study in case of patterns. Morphology, on the other hand, is what? It is study of the land use pattern of a settlement. Study of the land use pattern of the settlement. That means how houses are arranged with respect to the roads, how they are arranged with respect to the agricultural fields, ठीक है, that is what we are essentially focusing on study in case of morphology. While we are talking about types, type simply refers to the degree of agglomeration of the occupants units. ठीक है. So if we talk about the types of rural settlement, we can take two ends of the spectrum, and one we'll simply call them as nucleated or compact. Nucleated or compact settlements. While on the other hand, here lie the second category, which is referred to as the dispersed settlements. So in nucleated compact settlements, what we'll be finding, settlements are packed together. They are, other term that we also use for this is clustered, very near to each other. Such type of settlements are referred to as the nucleated or compact or clustered settlements. While when the settlements are lying very, very far away from each other, such type of settlements are referred to as the dispersed settlements. Like if you go in the Himalayas for trekking, very commonly you'll be finding that there would be huts at some distance from each other. Like for example, you'll find a hut, then you travel for 1-2 hours, then again you'll find another hut. So this type of occupation is essentially what this type of occupants is referred to as the dispersed type of settlements, when individual huts are scattered all over the landscape, far away from each other. That is essentially the case of dispersed settlements. You can understand, अगर ये दो स्पेक्ट्रम है तो इसके बीच में भी मिलेगा कुछ न कुछ. ठीक है, so we will be finding that here there would be presence of what we call it as the semi-compact settlements, or semi-nucleated or semi-clustered. Here also I can go and talk about like the case of hamleted settlements. Hamlet is a settlement which has almost few houses clustered together. Like for example, if you talk about hamlet would have generally, in India's perspective, it would have generally around 10 houses, 10 families living near to each other. So such type of settlement is referred to as the hamleted settlements. So अगर मुझे simply इसको दिखाना है, so how would be a nucleated settlement? Here is the case of a nucleated settlement. Here all the houses are basically what? They are clustered at a place. So this is nucleated or clustered settlement. On the other hand, if I have to show semi-compact settlements, you can see almost at a fixed distance from each other. Can you see? Almost at a distance x. They are distributed over the landscape. Such type of settlements are referred to as what? Semi-nucleated. I'm just giving an x like it is just a random comparison, explanation. Okay? Not necessarily it will always be same distance. Just we are saying that at a particular distance, on an average at a particular distance, these type of settlements would be found. Hamleted on the other hand is a settlement which would have only fewer houses. Fewer houses. So this type of settlement is referred to as the hamleted settlements. While if you talk about dispersed settlements, they would be very different type, distributed randomly over the landscape. Okay, so this is basically referred to as the four major type of settlements that we'll be talking about. So एक बात बहुत clear होनी चाहिए, type is what? It is degree of agglomeration of the houses, the rural houses. That is what we mean by the term type. It should not be confused with the term pattern. Pattern refers to what? Shape. So अभी देखेंगे circular, rectangular, spiral, several type of shapes we will be talking about. ठीक है? Essentially you can also understand, अगर मुझे shape की बात करना है, you think and tell me in which types the shapes would be made. Can I say it would be nucleated and semi-nucleated, where we'll be finding a particular type of shapes. In case of hamleted and dispersed, they would be more random, not displaying any particular type of pattern or shape. Okay? So that is what we are going to essentially study here about nucleated or about the type and patterns of settlements. So you can see three major types यहाँ पर लिखा हुआ है. Compact, semi-compact and dispersed. Although इनके बीच में एक और हम रख सकते हैं hamleted. So यहाँ पर लिखा हुआ है, you can see settlement refers to characteristic grouping of population in occupancy units. यहाँ पे occupancy होना चाहिए. Together with various structures and associated facilities that serve the inhabitants. That is essentially what we refer to as the settlements. On the basis of hierarchy, the settlements can be classified into rural and urban. Hierarchy or characteristics, we can simply classify them into rural and urban. Now, here there is a term referred to as siting. Okay, so it is actually, this term is related with these two terms, site and situation. Site and situation. Site refers to the actual characteristic of the piece of land where that settlement is built, while situation refers to the relative location of that land. Okay? So site refers to the actual piece on the ground on which the settlement is to be built, while situation refers to its location in relation to various surroundings. Various siting factors like availability of water, fertile land, dry land, shelter, defense, etc. govern the decision of human civilizations in choosing the site for rural settlements. ठीक है? So अभी देखते हैं इसको. One thing is very clear, if I ask you that when we are talking about nucleated and these various types of settlements, can we say here very clearly there would be two type of forces which would be responsible for the formation of such settlements. And very importantly, one type of force, if you talk about, can I say, would be centripetal force, and other type of force would be essentially the centrifugal forces. Okay? So when there is formation of nucleated settlements, can I say here centripetal force would exceed the centrifugal forces. That is why the settlements are becoming compact. On the other hand, if you look into the semi-compact, can I say here centripetal force would become equal to centrifugal force. Thus, the settlement you are finding is a semi-compact type of settlement. On the other hand, dispersed and hamleted will be finding that centripetal force would be less than the centrifugal force. It would be lesser than the centrifugal force. Okay? So that is how you find that such type of settlements would be built. Now what would be the factors which would be behaving as the centripetal and centrifugal forces? What are the factors which are going to be playing this role? ठीक है, अभी देखते हैं variety of factors it would be related with. And देखो यहाँ पर मटेरियल में जो है वो जनरल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से लिखा हुआ है. आई एम गोइंग टू टॉक दिस विथ अ स्पेसिफिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. सो इसमें हम कुछ कुछ चीजें लिखते जाएंगे. फर्स्ट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फैक्टर्स रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर formation of nucleated settlements. Responsible for the formation of nucleated settlements. So factors जब भी हम सोचेंगे तो you can understand there can be two type of factors, natural factors and cultural factors. So first if I start with the natural factors. Natural factors. These factors can also be referred to as the siting factors. So number of siting factors are there. Like for example, when a person tries to choose a land, from the ancient times it was not random. The villages which were to be made, they were not randomly constructed. They were based upon certain kind of rational thinking. What is the thing without which we cannot survive? Most important thing, most fundamental. It is air. ठीक है. Second number पर it is going to be clearly water. You'll be less able to survive without water. Air तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं. So again, if you talk about natural factors, first very important thing that people should have in mind when they were choosing site for the rural areas, it was basically what? It was the water. ठीक है. एयर वाली बात पे ठीक है हंस रहे हो तुम लोग. The thing is, हमें हमारी लाइफ में जो बहुत सारी सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीजें होती हैं, we don't pay attention to them. We take them for granted. This is a very crucial thing that you should learn. I ask this question many times when I teach this topic, and majority of cases, in majority, people don't remember air being the most fundamental thing without which we will not survive. Without food you will survive for some time. Without land also you will be able to survive for some time. Without water also you can survive few days. But without air you will not last more than few minutes. Okay? So it is like this. Like for example, for you people, for us, we forget many times our parents. Very important, but we really forget. Too much busy with friends and others, and we tend to forget. So you should not. It is a very important lesson of life. Okay. Natural factors if you talk about, So first very important factor is the aspect of water availability. And if you talk about the water availability, because without water it would be difficult for settlements to survive. Okay? Presence of water gives rise to what? We call them as wet point settlements. Gives rise to wet point settlements. ठीक है? So wet point settlements कौन से होते हैं? Which are clustered around water bodies. Those settlements which are clustered around water bodies. Like for example, if I have to think about wet point settlements, the settlements which would be found in the desert, like the Rajasthan desert, Marusthali of India, they would be essentially which type of settlements? Nucleated settlements or clustered settlements. So why? Because in the desert there is no water. And wherever water would be found, places like oasis. So what will happen? Settlements would tend to cluster around that point, leading to formation of the wet point settlements. So nucleated settlements are very common in the oasis in the desert. Similar type of such water related settlements, it is very common to find where? It is very common to find in the Indo-Gangetic plains, for example. In the Indo-Gangetic plains or the fertile river valleys. Okay? And where here Indo-Gangetic plains, here where we are finding around rivers, very commonly would be found, or other areas like they would be very commonly found around ponds. Okay? Sometimes even surrounding wells they would be built. So water is one of the very important factor which has what? Centripetal pull. And thus what it does, it attracts the settlements. Okay? So that is one of the major factors. Then if you talk about once people have found presence of water, the next thing that they would look for is presence of flat fertile land. So another very important factor would be the factor of topography. इसमें एक सेंटेंस लिख लो. According to Vidal de Lablache, clustered villages was characteristic of areas having extensive flat fertile lands, reflecting humans' tendency of uniform and extensive exploitation. ठीक है? So rural areas are essentially what? Rural areas are based upon agriculture, which is dependent upon land. So wherever farmers would find that there is lots of fertile land, what they would do, they want to use this land to maximum. As a result of which, what will happen? That type of land would give rise to compact settlement. So what Vidal is simply saying, that where there is continuous flat fertile land present, people will want to exploit it to maximum. Thus what they would do, they would cluster all their houses near, so that they take minimum of this land and majority of this land is used for cultivation. Okay? So again, presence of such topography, it gives rise to compact type of settlements. Compact settlements. Then there are others also topography mein. Like for example, it is very commonly found where undulating topography or hill tracts. Meet plains. That means where there is presence of the slope breaks. So this point is the slope break. This is another area. Here you will be finding presence of compact settlements, big compact settlements. So that is another important factor. Then if you talk about other type of factors are related with shelter factors. And if you talk about shelter factors, one type of shelter factors is related with hazards. Very good example is the presence of dry point settlements. Dry point settlements. So once you tell me, once people have found both water and flat fertile land, can I say the next third thing they would look for is that this land should also be safe. It should be an area which is not frequently suffering from hazards problem. Like for example, very commonly the floods problem. Okay, so can I say they would look for a higher ground? They would look for a higher ground. And if there is presence of this higher ground, will this higher ground would have centripetal pull? Hoga ya nahi hoga? This higher ground would have the centripetal pull. Like for example, very commonly such dry point settlements are found in the river valleys around the river bluffs. River bluffs. So bluffs are essentially what? These are the higher ground. So when the river is meandering, these areas are higher, while these areas are essentially what? These are the lower areas. So this would be one point where some settlements would be built. Although it is not also safe, but we'll find that this is being higher ground, it essentially attracts settlements. Also in India, for example, the Bhangar in the Indo-Gangetic plains. This is basically the old flood plains of the rivers which attract settlement. So इंडिया में जो इंडो गैंजेटिक प्लेन्स में फ्लड प्लेन्स मिलते हैं वो दो होते हैं, दो तरह के फ्लड प्लेन्स. So this is your Bhangar and this new floodplain is referred to as Khadar. Here is the river which is flowing. So originally what was the case? Originally this was the situation where river was flowing like this, and this was the old floodplain. But river got more energy and it cut across its own floodplain, and thus part of the floodplain is now lying as a alluvial terrace, okay, which is higher ground. So this Bhangar is the place where majority of villages in the Indo-Gangetic plains are found, or they are located. And why? Simple reason is because it has centripetal pull. Because it is what? It is a dry point. It is a safe point. Okay? So very importantly, we'll be finding that presence of such safe points would be very crucial in determining where the settlements would be located. So this is another factor which is playing important role in determining the presence of such type of settlements. Other things which would have a pull, a kind of pull would be exerted, would be presence of building material. If there is absence of building material, what will happen? There would be less houses constructed. If there is presence of building material, what will happen? Then more houses can be constructed clustered together. So presence or availability of the building material is another factor which applies the centripetal pull. ठीक है? Because हम nucleated settlements की बात कर रहे हैं, तो हम किसकी बात कर रहे हैं? We are focusing upon the factors which are having centripetal pull. So one type of centripetal pull is exerted by what? Presence or availability of building material. ये shelter का ही एक subset है. Availability of the building material. So for example, in the Indo-Gangetic plains, what is the main building material which is abundantly available? It is mud. Mud. Plus also you will be finding agricultural residue. Mud plus agricultural residue. So these have what? These provide the avenues for people to build their houses. So they also exert a kind of centripetal pull. Other areas they would have depending upon the availability. Like for example, if you talk about Himalayas, what would be the main building material? It would be stones, rock-made houses. If you go into the very humid areas of India like northeast, the most important building material there is bamboo. So there would be bamboo made houses that you will be finding. Okay? So again, we'll see, abhi dekhte hain. But these are the main natural factors which would be determining the, which would have the centripetal pull. There would be, however, several cultural factors which would have the centripetal pull. So if we talk about the second type of factors, the cultural factors which would have a centripetal pull. There are several types of cultural factors. One important cultural factor is that, can I say that human beings, they require for survival several things. For survival, number of things are required. Like for example, digging of well. Can I say we required for our survival? Other things like tillage of land. Can I say we require for our survival? Okay? field preparation, so many things which we require for our survival. And this requires, you tell me, individual effort or group effort? It requires group effort. There are several type of activities which requires group effort, and thus these have what? A kind of centripetal pull. They would make people to live together. ठीक है, so लिख लो इसको. Necessity for cooperation. Necessity for cooperation in the regulation and control of water, comma, digging of wells, comma, upkeep of public works, comma, preparation of land for cropping, etc., has centripetal pull which makes humans gravitate towards their fellow humans. Gravitate towards their fellow humans. ठीक है? So again, that is one of the very, very important factor, which is a cultural factor. ठीक है? So various forms of works that we said. So this is first factor. Another very important factor is, Vidal de Lablache says that if in an area there is fragmentation of the land holdings. So suppose this is the area and the land holdings of the people are highly fragmented. Like this. So A, B, C, these are their holdings. They are friends, they are brothers. Now, they will be working majority of the time in their fields. Can I say, but being with our fellow humans, being with our loved ones is one of our important necessity. So can I say where their meeting point can be? Can we say their meeting point can be the village where they can daily meet? Okay? So again, because it is human's necessity, it is a humanistic tendency. We want to be closer, or we want to meet our loved ones on daily basis. So that is basically what? That is giving rise to centripetal tendencies towards particular villages. So लिख लो इसको. According to Lablache, fragmentation of holdings, land holdings, in fact, fragmentation of land holdings present disadvantage to village dwellers. Disadvantage to village dwellers, which is counterbalanced by tendencies of nucleation. Where farmers can avail the amenities of communal life. amenities of communal life. We want to live in what? He is simply trying to say that humans like to live in communities. So this tendency of this humanistic tendency is an important centripetal pull. So लिख लो इसमें, this humanistic tendency of people wanting to live in communities is an important or has an important centripetal pull. So this is another. Then other factors can be there, like if you talk about the type of agriculture. So very importantly, it is very commonly found in the monsoon Asia, where there was intensive subsistence agriculture with rice dominance. That there was presence of what? Compact settlements. What was the primary reason for this? In such areas, or this type of agriculture is what? It is labor intensive. Okay? So that means in these areas what will happen with population density? It would be higher. Lots of work is required, and this labor intensiveness will give rise to what? It would give rise to compact settlements. So type of agriculture is another very, very important factor which is there. In fact, if you talk about एग्रीकल्चर का एक और कैरेक्टरिस्टिक क्या है? That agriculture is essentially a seasonal activity. It is essentially a seasonal activity. Now, if it is a seasonal activity, you tell me, will the employment be available only in particular part of the year? Now, if it is so, if there is presence of big compact villages, will there be demand for other goods and services? And will this tendency give rise to subsidiary occupations? Okay? So this is another very important factor which is giving rise to nucleation tendency. So isko likh lo, unemployed and semi-employed laborers engage themselves in subsidiary occupations. Which can flourish in compact villages. Then certain cultural institutions have centripetal pull. Like for example, if you talk about religious places very frequently were found to attract compact settlements. Others were also there, like for example, presence of the local money lender. Local money lender. So majority of people living in rural areas, they are poor. Still they require money. Today money, in the past it was commodities they required. For example, they might be requiring it for making marriage of their children or some other functions. It is always, traditionally, it is required. Now, a money lender would be willing to give money to whom? A person from inside the village or outside the village? Inside the village, because he knows that person. He is sure that if required, he will be able to put pressure and take back the money. Someone not living in the village, he is out of his control. Okay? So the local money lender will have what? He would have the centripetal tendencies. He would have that centripetal pull. He would attract more people into the village. Okay? So several such type of cultural institutions, they were essentially what? They were having this kind of centripetal pull. Or be they, like if you talk about in India, there was one Jajmani system. So in Jajmani system, the land owner was essentially considered as the Jajman. And this Jajman required lots of laborers to be working in the field. This Jajman was responsible for taking care of the laborer and his family. All type of needs, whether it is related with the marriage of children, other type of functions, all responsibilities were of that type of Jajman. So again, Jajman will also have what? He would have the centripetal pull. So various such type of institutions, they are basically what? Having centripetal pull. Then need for defense. Need for defense. Okay? For example, if you look into Western Rajasthan, which is located at the borders of India, and this was an area which was frequently attacked. Okay? It was frequently attacked by invaders from west. Coming from west. So what will be very frequently finding that here there was tendency to make villages which were surrounded by walls. Tendency to make villages which were compact and surrounded by walls made up of stones or mud. Tendency to make compact villages surrounded by walls made up of stones or mud. Similarly, in the northeast India, we'll be finding that the Naga villages, many of the Naga villages are found at the hilltops. They are essentially what they are? Compact villages which are located at the hilltops. So again, because in the past there used to be tribal rivalries, okay, it is still there. Although it is because of the emergence of strong government, it is less today. But there was tribal rivalry. So being located here in clustered manner, what it would do, it would give advantage to these tribes. They can directly see and guard themselves. Also, if required, they can throw stones, do head hunting ठीक है. So they used to cluster their houses where at the hilltop. It was advantageous. ठीक है. So this is another factor of defense which is playing very important role. Similarly, these similar tendencies are found in other tribal groups. Like for example, it was very common in the Hansa tribe of northern Nigeria. Hansa tribes of northern Nigeria. Similarly, in the Mormon villages of US. Mormon villages in USA. It is another aspect which has given rise to. ठीक है. So all these are the main factors. एक और इसमें लिख लो, पीछे हमने जो लिखा था एक एग्जाम्पल लिख लो वहां पर बस. टाइप ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर में वी टॉक्ड अबाउट मॉनसून एशिया. इन रिसेंट टाइम्स देयर इज एमर्जेंस ऑफ व्हाट, प्लांट सेटलमेंट्स. या हम इसको एक अलग से भी कैटेगरी बना सकते हैं. यू बेटर राइट वन मोर कैटेगरी. एमर्जेंस ऑफ planned settlements. So this factor is seen very frequently in the communist countries. In the communist countries like Russia, China. Here what is present? There is presence of collective farms. Collective farms. It is cooperative agriculture. Presence of collective farms. And for these type of collective farms, one of the most suited type of villages are compact villages. One of the most suited type of villages are the compact villages. ठीक है. So people living in their village here in a compact manner, and each of them have their fields distributed. So they would combine their fields, and this would essentially become what, the collective farm of all these people. ठीक है. Because this type of agriculture is a more commercial type of agriculture which requires lots of input, including lots of labor. So presence of such big villages would also allow to have such labor available for the farming operations. ठीक है. So all these factors are what? The factors which are having centripetal tendencies, centripetal force, which generate centripetal pull. But there are second category of factors, and this second category of factors which are factors which generate dispersal or centrifugal tendencies. Factors which generates dispersal or centrifugal tendencies. So there are several factors which are generating such type of dispersal or centrifugal tendencies. First is very clearly the natural factors. Again, several natural factors. First, very importantly, we can start with topography. Topography. So if you talk about topography, according to Vidal de Lavlache, degree of ruggedness degree of ruggedness of the land. Is directly related with degree of dispersal. Degree of dispersal. Okay. So more the ruggedness of the land, more would be what? There would be more dispersal. For example, if you look into the Malwa Plateau region of India, Malwa Plateau, what we find, depending upon the degree of ruggedness, or here we can say degree of ravining, which has taken place, you'll find that the settlements would range from semi-compact to hamleted. Semi-compact to hamleted. Where the degree of ravining is less, it is common to find semi-compact settlements. Where the degree of ravining has increased, it is common to find hamleted settlements. ठीक है. So again, topography is very important factor. इसका दूसरा example अगर मुझे देना है, if you go in the Himalayas, again what has happened? The degree of ruggedness is high. As a result, you'll be finding majority of settlements are hamleted type. So you might have seen it would be hamleted to semi-nucleated. So देखा होगा, if you go on these areas, Himalayas, you'll be finding that इस तरह से यहाँ पर roads बनी होती हैं, and you'll find कि एक जगह पर you'll find a cluster of houses. कुछ houses मिलेंगे, फिर काफी दूर तक you'll not find anything. Then as you go further away, at another point you'll find that few houses would be present. ऐसा ही देखा होगा. So again, it is what? It is related with the degree of ruggedness. That means availability of flat land here is what? It is limited. And accordingly we'll be finding that there will be presence of the houses. So topography is one of the very, very dominant factor which is giving rise to such type of situation. Others, like for example, water availability की बात करें, पहले हमें लिखना चाहिए था, भूल गया उसको लिखना. फर्स्ट पॉइंट, हाँ. मुश्किल होगा, बट डिपेंड करता है, बिकॉज देखो टेक्नोलॉजी इज अनदर फैक्टर. टेक्नोलॉजी जैसे जैसे बढ़ती है, कॉम्पैक्टनेस वैसे वैसे बढ़ता जाएगा. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, हिमालयाज में भी इफ यू गो, यू विल बी फाइंडिंग प्लेसेस लाइक शिमला. शिमला क्या है? एक कॉम्पैक्ट सेटलमेंट है. ठीक है. तो वहां पर बेसिकली क्या हुआ? टेक्नोलॉजी हैज इम्प्रूव्ड. विलेजेस में हाउएवर टेक्नोलॉजी लो होती है. ठीक है. दैट इज वाई उसमें डिफरेंट टाइप्स मिल सकते हैं. hilly areas में it would be generally, because of the lower technology, it would be hamleted to semi-nucleated at maximum. Okay, so if you talk about water availability के basis पर, so it is found that in areas where there is generally high water table or groundwater table, where there is presence of high groundwater table which is uniformly available, so in such areas it was found that settlements can range from semi-nucleated to dispersed. semi nucleated to dispersed. ठीक है, so समझ सकते हो, this is one area, this is another area. Here the water table is here. Here the water table is like this. So in which of these situations more people will be required to dig a well? It would be B. Here the well has to be dug deeper. More people would be required. Here very few people would be able to dig the well. अभी हमने जब agglomeration की tendency की बात की, तो one of the factors was what? The public works which are to be done, which require more people. Here the water table is such that it doesn't require too many people. Here there is less need for common sharing of the resources. Here people can have more individual rights, their individual properties. Resources can be more individualistic with them. Okay? So where such high water table is found, it is found that settlements can range from dispersed to semi-nucleated. Again I am saying it is not necessary that जहाँ पर भी बहुत high ground water table होगा, it would always be like this. We are just saying that in some places. Because in many places where high groundwater table is found, like West Bengal, Bihar, in these areas what you will be finding, there is presence of compact settlements. Because there other factors become more dominant, like the rice cultivation factor. Okay? But several places we can find that high groundwater table would give rise to such kind of dispersed settlements. So water is another very, very dominant factor which is giving rise to such type of settlements. Then other type of factors, third हमने देखा था shelter factors. यहाँ पे shelter factors भी centrifugal tendencies create कर सकते हैं, like harsh climate. So very frequently harsh climates were giving rise to dispersed to hamleted settlements. They're giving rise to dispersed to hamleted settlements. Very good example is if you go in the upper slopes of Himalayas. The upper slopes of the Himalayas. So in the upper slopes of the Himalayas there is presence of dispersed settlements. Dispersed settlements. So जब हम बहुत upper slopes पे जाएंगे तो you'll be finding that there is one house and after much long distance you'll be finding that there is another house. So this is basically what? This is the case of dispersed settlement, and these are individual house नहीं huts हम simply इनको बोल सकते हैं. They are simply huts which are built. So actually these huts belongs to the pastoral tribes like Gaddis and Bakarwals. Gaddis and Bakarwals. So actually what happens, they build here their summer houses. Summer houses are built there, and in the summer, as the ice melts and the pastures open up, they would take their herds in these areas. Okay? They need some place to rest, and that is why they are building these houses. Okay? But they don't require very dense houses, because individual people, individual boys, men, they are taking these herds for pastoralism. So they can share many of these houses, and again they require that they would stay there for some time, फिर वहाँ से एक दो दिन के बाद फिर से move on कर जाएंगे they will, and they would go on the upper house and there they live. So it is more of a, not more individual, but of more of a shared type of thing. Okay? Once we went to trekking, एंड जोश में हम बहुत आगे निकल गए. अल्टीमेटली व्हाट हैपेंड कि वो भी देख लिया था डिस्कवरी वाला बियर ग्रिल्स, तो होटल में सारा पर्स वर्स सब रख के गए. वी लिव इन द वाइल्ड, बट वहां पे जाके वाइल्ड हो गए. इट वॉज लाइक कि थर्ड डे इट वॉज लाइक कि वी विल नॉट सर्वाइव, बहुत मुश्किल था. एंड इट वॉज सो कोल्ड यू कैन नॉट अंडरस्टैंड. वी हैड जस्ट टेकन द स्लीपिंग बैग एंड एक पतला सा देयर वॉज अ स्पेशल टाइप ऑफ कंबल that we had taken and we went there. So we were burning पेड़ से काट के लकड़ी, we were also burning that, and that day there was also very heavy rainfall. So सारी लकड़ियां गीली थी, वो भी नहीं जल रही थी. लकीली हमें एक ऐसा हट मिला, बंद था वो, उसका ताला तोड़ा हमने, and we went there and luckily we found that there was wood inside also. So we burned that wood and we were able to survive that night. It was very difficult. It was like so much chilling cold, you cannot understand. So that day I found which is the this dispersed settlements kaise hote hain. Okay. So there is presence of these harsh climates. It is very very important factor. Similarly अभी हमने देखा था shelter factor में another very common factor is the factor of hazards and disease proneness. Factor of hazard and disease proneness. So if you talk about the factor of hazards, like for example if you go in the Indo-Gangetic plains, अभी हमने देखा था खादर, भांगर और खादर देखा था. खादर is the new flood plains which are annually affected by floods. Khadar is an area which is annually affected by floods. So if it is annually affected by floods, you tell me, will it be fertile? It is highly fertile. Highly fertile. And thus it has agricultural fields. Now you tell me, will there be people who will be working in these agricultural fields, in their farms? But can they make their permanent houses here? They cannot make their permanent houses because this area is annually affected by flood. So can I say they would make in these agricultural fields their temporary huts? Temporary huts where sometimes they can rest, they can keep their agricultural commodities for some time in these huts. So they very frequently build these huts in the farm. So if this is the farm, so one house here like this, so it would give rise to what? It would give rise to dispersed type of settlements. So these are very very commonly found in these areas, Indo-Gangetic plains. Similarly, if you look into the Central America, the east coast of Central America, it is referred to as the mosquito coast. Is referred to as the mosquito coast. You can understand यहाँ पर कौन सी winds चलती हैं? Trade winds, easterly winds coming from the sea. These winds would be what? Hot and humid. So the coastal areas would be what? Under hot and humid conditions, it would give rise to large amount of mosquitoes. Okay? So there is lots of disease prevalence here. Malaria, several diseases related with mosquito or mosquito-borne diseases are very very prevalent in this region. And because of this you will be finding, अगर मेक्सिको का मैप उठा करके देखो पॉपुलेशन का, you will very clearly understand that people are living not on the coast but in the interior plateau. Mexico City कहाँ पर located है? It is in the interior plateau. Why? Because these are not very suitable for habitation, the coastal areas. Although they are plain, but because of this disease proneness, they are not very suitable areas for habitation. Okay? So, if you talk about this type of situation also gives rise to what? Dispersal tendencies. Dispersal tendencies. Okay? So again, this is another very important factor which is giving rise to this type of climate. So shelter factors are the third category of factors. So this is natural. Cultural factors की बात करते हैं. Cultural factors. Number of cultural factors are responsible for which give rise to dispersals. One important cultural factor, if you talk about, is the land reforms and distribution of surplus land. Distribution of surplus land. For example, in India there was land reforms. Under land reforms, surplus land was distributed to the landless laborers. Now in India, who are the people who are landless laborers? Lower caste. Who were the people who were exploited in the village? So, suppose this is the village site where it was located, and this is the main agricultural fields which were present. Now this farmer was given an agricultural field which was here. Can I say everyday commutation to this agricultural field for this farmer was what? It was difficult. He also didn't had too much of advantage for living in the village. भाई विलेज में इज्जत मिल रही हो, कुछ हो रहा हो तो फिर वहां रहने का कोई मतलब है. Every day he has to suffer so much of insult. So what he thinks, he would prefer that it is better I go and settle in my agricultural field. It would be more economical, better for me. So what has happened? Such type of land reforms have given rise to tendencies of dispersal. Tendencies of dispersal. So look, as the land tenure systems changed, with decline of feudalism, giving rise to private land ownership, has favored outgrowth of hamlets and isolated dwellings. Hamlets and isolated dwellings. Okay? So this is one type of cultural factor which is giving rise to such tendencies. Then if you talk about other type of cultural orthodoxies. Cultural orthodoxies are also giving rise to such type of dispersal tendencies. For example, if you take the example of India, in India the exploitation of the backward caste, exploitation of backward caste by upper caste has also given rise to dispersal tendencies. ठीक है? Others can also be there, like for example, religious or ethnic persecution. So if there is fear of this religious or ethnic related persecutions, people will flee those villages and they would move out in some other areas. For example, this phenomena is very commonly seen in the jungle Pradesh of India, that is Uttar Pradesh, Western Uttar Pradesh. Very, very dominant phenomena it has become. Muslim families are doing what? They are fleeing the villages because of the fear of persecution by the majority community. And it is commonly seen that now they are settling in the nearby forest areas, government-owned forest areas, and they have tended to settle in those areas, or they are going to the cities. Okay? So this is very, very common problem which has developed in these areas. Similarly, if you talk about other factors are also there, like one factor we talked about is type of agriculture. So, in general, it was found where there was presence of agricultural types like extensive agriculture. कहाँ पर होता है ये? In the steppes. In steppes, another form of agriculture is ranching. In these areas, you'll be finding very big farms, very big ranches. ठीक है? So they would have what? Very big farm, one farmhouse to be located. So in these areas, what we will be finding, there will be common tendencies of dispersal. देखा होगा? You might have seen those English movies where there is a very big farm, उसके बीच में एक farm house है, ठीक है? वो cowboy hat लगा करके, वो बंदूक ले करके, that actors would be there, ठीक है? With their horses. So that is basically what? That is the extensive agriculture activity. And there very commonly you will be finding presence of such dispersal tendencies. Similarly, other factors like the construction of roads, railways and other transportation routes. What they have done, they have led to more dispersal tendencies. They have led to villagers come out along these transportation routes. And to construct shops, dhabas, etc. So suppose this was the main village site. So again, this is what? It is a junction point. That means lots of people would be traveling from here every day. So person living here, he thought, why not exploit this opportunity? And he comes up with a tea shop here. Another, उसने देखा यार ये तो बहुत पैसे कमा रहा है, I should also do something. He comes up with a pan shop. ठीक है. So again what will happen with this, there would be tendencies of dispersal which would be seen. ठीक है. It is very common if you go in the village areas, it is very commonly you'll be seeing after some distance from the main village such type of shops, particularly at the junctions of the main roads, they would be seen. ठीक है. So this is another important factor which is leading to such type of situation. Similarly, if you talk about others, like in recent times there is clearing of forests in tropical regions has given rise to plantation agricultures. This is mainly for plantation agriculture, and here you will be finding very commonly such dispersal tendencies would be found. So people would move away from the village, they would clear land and they would settle in these areas. Like for example, very commonly you can understand, traditionally भी ये होता रहा है, jhum cultivation is an example where hamleted settlements would be emerging. ठीक है. So it is very common type of tendency which is giving rise to the situations of dispersal. So all these are the factors which are there for the formation of dispersed settlements. ठीक है. So हमने देखा कि what are the factors which are giving rise to tendencies of nucleation, what are the factors which are giving rise to tendencies of dispersal. ठीक है. So when there is greater nucleation, there would be formation of which type of settlements? Nucleated or compact settlements. When there is stronger dispersal tendencies, then there would be presence of dispersed settlements. In fact, very frequently if you talk about the intermediate type of settlements, there are two types of intermediate settlements. One which would display more permanency, others which are transitional in nature. So if you talk about hamleted and semi-compact type of settlements, one type of semi-compact hamleted settlements, these are related with the deterministic factors. Like for example, you take the case of Himalayas. So can I say in Himalayas, the problem is that of lack of availability of flat land. Lack of the availability of flat land is a very big factor here. So in such a condition, can I say people will have to create terraces for the flat land? So making of terraces is done. Now, despite this making of terraces, you tell me, can I say in such areas there will always be this problem? Can we say that? So in such areas, can I say presence of hamleted semi-compact settlements would be more like a natural situation? You cannot do much for that. In future also, them to ultimately change is what? Is not possible with the present level of technology. They would continue to remain semi-compact or hamleted, whatever they are. होगा ऐसा? With the present level of technology, it is difficult to visualize that the situation is going to change in future. Okay, so this is one type of such settlements. But other places there is more possibilistic orientation, and other resource rich areas, what we find, such settlements are more transitional in nature. Are more ट्रांजिशनल इन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स. ठीक है. सो अभी हमने फॉर एग्जाम्पल बात की कि देयर वाज अ विलेज. सो गवर्नमेंट ने क्या किया भाई, इधर जो यहाँ पे पुअर कम्युनिटीज थी उनको भी लैंड बांट दी गई. छोटे छोटे ही फील्ड्स मिले बट सबको मिल गया अपने अपने फील्ड्स. ठीक है. सो नाउ इसमें से एक बैकवर्ड कास्ट पर्सन was fed up. He was having more risk-taking abilities. So what he did, he decided कि I'm now fed up, I will go and live in my land and practice my occupation. So what he does, he goes and makes his house here. अब उसके आसपास के दोस्त कभी कभी मिलता तो होगा ही, बिकॉज उनके फ्लैट फील्ड्स यहाँ पर है. So they are meeting daily, they are seeing, oh, he's very much happy. So ultimately what will happen? They would also think, yeah, it is better that we leave this village and go and live there. Humans' necessity to have to live with their fellow men would necessitate कि वो अपने houses यहाँ पर बनाएं, यहाँ पर बनाएंगे, यहाँ पर बनाएंगे. It would be something like this. So initially which was a dispersed settlement now has become what? It has become a hamleted settlement. ठीक है. Over a period of time it would happen that this can keep on growing. ठीक है. As more and more people continue to pour in, this can keep on growing and it can convert to semi-nucleated, even later on nucleated settlements. ठीक है. So again, in resource rich areas, such type of presence of hamleted, semi-nucleated settlements are more transitional in nature. With time they would grow into bigger compact settlements. ठीक है. If the other conditions are favorable, they would grow into bigger compact settlements. So that is about the intermediary settlement. जो अभी हमने देखा, they would be formed when there is some kind of balance between centripetal and centrifugal forces. Then such type of settlement, semi-nucleated particularly, are formed. So this is essentially related with the type of settlements. यहाँ पर देखो ये थोड़ा सा गलत लिखा हुआ है. दिस इज नॉट लैंड सेटलमेंट, इट इज प्लान्ड सेटलमेंट्स. ठीक है. एक और टॉपिक लिखते हैं, इसमें नहीं है, एंड दैट इज रूरल सेटलमेंट टाइप्स इन इंडिया. Rural settlement types in India. So what we find that the type of rural settlements in India are variety of them. First we are going to talk about regionally, हम इसकी बात करते हैं. Rural settlements in Himalayas. Rural settlements in Himalayas. So Himalayas have presence of all types of settlements. Himalayas have presence of all types of settlements. So nucleated settlements are found. Himalayas में कहाँ पर मिलते हैं? Nucleated settlements are found in the valley floors. In the valley floors between the mountain ranges. Between the mountain ranges. Full stop. Such nucleated settlements are not very big. But are highly compact. Like they are present in Kashmir Valley, Doon Valley, Kullu Valley. On the slopes of the mountains, the settlements range from hamleted to semi-compact. Which is result of the limited availability of resources, including land and water. ठीक है? On the higher slopes, there is presence of isolated dispersed settlements. ठीक है? So this is the tendencies which are very commonly found in the Himalayas. अब इसमें कुछ particularly eastern Himalayas के बारे में लिखें. In the eastern Himalayas, the settlements are generally small and widely dispersed. Due to steep slopes, highly undulating topography, heavy rainfall, dense forest cover, and diversity of ethnicity. Full stop. In the northeast, compact and well organized villages are found in the northern zone, where Indo-Tibetan culture persists. That means यहाँ पर किस लिए compact villages बने? Because these are minority cultures. So that fear is that factor or historical factor of defense is making them build the compact, bigger size settlements. In Meghalaya, villages of Khasi tribes along the hill slopes range from dispersed to compact, depending upon resource availability. In Nagaland, compact villages are found at hilltops. As a result of the historical factor of defense. In Manipur, Kuki, Kuki tribes practice jhum cultivation, which has given rise to hamleted settlements. ठीक है, that is the case of the Himalayas. Western Himalayas पहले लिखा हमने, फिर Eastern Himalayas में लिखा. That is how the settlements are found. Then the Indo-Gangetic Plains or the Great Plains of India. The Great Plains of India. Here also variety of types of settlements are found. Variety of types of settlements are found. For example, if we start with Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan, in the arid areas of Bikaner, Barmer, Jaisalmer, wet point settlements associated with oases. Give rise to compact settlements, which are small in size. Full stop. But in northern Rajasthan, presence of Indira Gandhi Canal has given rise to large compact settlements. ठीक है. In Punjab and Haryana, there is again what? Presence of uniformly distributed compact settlements located over Bhangar. But Khadar is characterized by presence of semi-compact to hamleted settlements. Then next, Ganga Yamuna Doab, presence of large sized villages on the Bhangar. Then Tarai belt. In the Tarai belt, the villages are semi-compact and unevenly distributed. Why? Because of forest and marshy land and also seasonal flooding. Due to forest, marshy land and seasonal flooding. ठीक है? In the middle Ganga plains, the villages are mostly compact, large, compact, located on the Bhangar. Full stop. However, the Khadar has presence of dispersed to hamleted settlements. In Brahmaputra Valley, the settlements display agglomeration tendencies along river levees and transportation arteries. So on the river levees and transportation arteries, compact settlements have come up. That means agglomeration means compact. But if you go in the floodplain, the floodplains have presence of semi-compact to hamleted settlements, depending on availability of dry points. Okay, so Brahmaputra Valley biggest problem is what? Flooding is one of the biggest problem. So again, depending upon the availability of how much is the size of the dry land, you'll be finding that semi-compact to hamleted settlements are present. So this is the plains. Then peninsular India. Again, there is mixed type of settlements found here. Like if we start with the Aravalli region. So throughout the Aravalli region, the hilly tracts have given rise to dispersed settlements. Like in Mewad, Marwad, Alwar. These are common. While the districts of Jaipur, Sawai Madhopur and Bundi have given rise to compact to semi-compact settlements. ऑलरेडी हमने मालवा के बारे में लिखा था. इन द मालवा settlements range from hamleted to semi-compact depending on the degree of ravining. In Bundelkhand, a similar situation is found where degree of ruggedness determines the type of settlement. In Chota Nagpur Plateau, Hazaribagh and Ranchi has presence of semi-compact to hamleted settlements. While the Rajmahal tract has semi-compact to compact settlements. Full stop. Fertile areas of Chhattisgarh have presence of compact to semi-compact settlements. Fertile lava plateau of Maharashtra has given rise to clustered settlements. Clustered settlements. The Malnad region of Karnataka is highly rugged. Malnad region of Karnataka is highly rugged. There is hill and valley topography वहाँ पर मिलती है. So it's highly rugged, has given rise to dispersed to hamleted villages. Although in favorable valley sites, compact villages can also be found. Full stops. Same is the situation in Telangana and Rayalaseema tracts. Full stop. However, the Maidan region of Karnataka has presence of large compact villages. And last one, अगर हम बात करें तो the coastal plains. So if you talk about coastal plains, the Mahanadi Delta has presence of high escarpments which are dry points, which has given rise to semi-compact to compact settlements. Then next, in Sundarban, Krishna Godavari, Kaveri Delta, intensive rice farming has given rise to nucleated settlements. Now, Malabar coast is generally characterized by presence of large compact villages. But the coconut and cashew plantations have encouraged growth of dispersed and hamleted settlements as well. Along the Saurashtra coast of Gujarat, small villages displaying semi-compact tendencies are found. In the semi-arid region of Kutch, settlements range from hamleted to semi-compact. ठीक है, ये सब कुछ एग्जाम्पल्स हैं. अगर इंडिया के पॉइंट ऑफ से आता है, रीजनली यू कैन बेसिकली थिंक ऑफ राइटिंग लाइक दिस. विल स्टॉप फॉर टुडे, मुझे अभी जाना है थोड़ा. अगेन हमारा क्लास कल का इसी टाइम पर होगा, मॉर्निंग.